Abducted 40-year-old Omotsiri Syrian Ibori, née Ben, and her 7-year-old son, Williams Ibori Jr., have safely broken free from their captors yesterday evening after a 5 million naira ransom payment was delivered secretly to an anonymous drop-off location, completely shifting the narrative of a tragic daylight ambush by heavily armed gunmen that had originally plunged Ogara, the ancestral home of former Delta State Governor, Chief James Onanefe Ibori, into intense fear and tension, highlighting a terrifying surge in local insecurity, as this victim is the youngest widow of the respected Ibori family patriarch, retired soldier, and former Onugbogodo of Oharefe, High Chief William Boyi Agbakanyo Ibori, who was born on February 2, 1942, and passed away from a heart attack at age 76 on July 11, 2018, leaving behind his wives, Mrs. Elizabeth and Omotsiri Syrian Ibori, alongside 9 children and 18 grandchildren, while her father, Chief Lucky Ben, recently confirmed exclusively to Osazuwakonedo News Media that his daughter is currently 40 years old, which clarifies historical timelines and corrects past social media rumors by establishing that she was approximately 32 years old when her high-profile traditional wedding ceremony was celebrated in Oharefe on Saturday, March 17, 2018, just 4 months before her husband's demise, meaning this high-profile abduction has severely worsened local anxiety by coming on the heels of another recent violent incident in Ogara where local farmer Mr. Vincent Adoja was brutally murdered on his farm and his wife kidnapped for ransom, forcing Ethiopia West Local Government Council Chairman Honorable Chris Onigba to vow an aggressive security crackdown as terrified residents demand urgent, decisive tactical intervention from the police command to halt the growing criminal epidemic, though a wave of deep relief has swept through the family space after a close source confirmed the breakthrough directly via an urgent text message stating that they have gone to drop the ransom and she has been released to them, following aggressive backdoor negotiations that forcefully broke down the heavily armed gang's initial staggering 150 million naira ransom demand. The victims regained their freedom yesterday night after the family successfully delivered a 5 million naira ransom payment to the kidnappers. The breakthrough was confirmed through an urgent message sent by a close family source to Osazuwakonedo, expressing immense relief as the ordeal came to an end. "My wife just sent me this. They have gone to drop the ransom and she has been released to them," the family source stated. The armed gang had initially slammed a staggering 150 million naira ransom demand on the family shortly after the violent ambush. However, tense negotiations over the last few days successfully brought the demand down to 5 million naira, which was physically delivered to a designated drop-off point before the victims were handed back over to their relatives. Both victims are currently being reunited with their family members. This high-profile kidnapping occurs amidst apparent sharp decline in public safety within the Ethiopia West local government area. Speaking out against the escalating wave of banditry-induced violence, Reverend David Ugola, co-convener of the civic advocacy group Ogara Study Group, OSG, strongly condemned the worsening state of security in the community. Addressing the media, Reverend Ugola lamented that what was once regarded as one of Delta's relatively peaceful regions has quickly transformed into an organized criminal flashpoint. The security situation in Ogara and the environment has worsened in recent times, with the increasing wave of banditry, kidnappings, and killings in the locality, Ugola stated. Victims are increasingly being murdered even after ransom payments while poor families are left helpless and devastated. The Ogara Study Group highlighted that the unchecked activities of armed syndicates and cult groups are systematically disrupting local commerce, education, and farming. The body is demanding immediate state and federal interventions, including the heavy deployment of surveillance technology, tactical personnel, and enhanced community policing frameworks. "We reject any narrative that blames the community for the criminality visited upon it," Ugola added, while calling for the recognition of local traditional institutions as active partners in security delivery. Following the safe release of the victims, an emotional letter of appreciation from the affected family emerged, shedding more light on the traumatic 10-day ordeal. The message, penned by a member of the Osagere family whose wife is the immediate younger sister to the released victim, was addressed directly to Reverend David Ugola to express deep gratitude for his massive tactical and emotional intervention. The family member revealed that Omotsiri Syrian Ibori and her young son were targeted by the criminal elements while transit-bound for medical treatment and a family visit, an event that left their household completely broken and paralyzed by trauma. The letter reads in full, "Dear Sir, I would like to sincerely express my heartfelt gratitude to you, Reverend David Ugola, for your massive support during one of the most difficult periods in my family's life. About 10 days ago, my wife's eldest sister and her 7-year-old son were kidnapped while traveling from Benin to Ogara for medical treatment and a family visit. The news was devastating. Our home was filled with fear and uncertainty, and my wife, deeply traumatized, fell ill while still trying to care for our children through it all. From the moment I informed you, you stood firmly with us. You consistently reached out not only to me and my wife, but also to her father, the extended family, and even engaged the media through the OSG initiative. Your guidance, encouragement, and unwavering presence throughout this ordeal went far beyond any material support. You were there every step of the way, offering clarity, strength, and direction when we needed it most. Standing in the gap for me, supporting me wholeheartedly, and showing such deep concern is something I will never forget. As the Orobo saying goes, Ohwo Yahweh Dua, and you have truly lived it. You have embodied the values of family and responsibility that define us in the Osagere family. In you, I have continued to see the fatherly role you so graciously took on after the passing of my late father, guiding and supporting me consistently. Despite your many responsibilities and busy schedules, you always make time for others, whether family or not, near or far. That level of selflessness is rare and deeply inspiring. You are truly a dependable father and mentor. On behalf of my wife and I, we say thank you deeply and sincerely. Thank you for standing by us, for your constant support, for your leadership through the Ogara Study Group, and for amplifying the realities of insecurity in our community. I remain forever grateful and will continue to serve you. Your example has left a lasting impact on me, and I pray for the grace to uphold and reflect these same values to your children and our larger family. May God Almighty continue to bless you, grant you good health, and reward you abundantly for all the good you do. Thank you so much, Sir. Migwa, #GratefulHeart. At the time of this report, security agencies are yet to release an official statement regarding the rescue or clarify whether active intelligence operations are underway to hunt down the fleeing syndicate.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Tragic daylight abduction of 40-year-old Omotsiri Syrian Ibori, née Ben, and her 7-year-old son, William Ibori Jr., by heavily armed gunmen has plunged Ogara, the ancestral home of former Delta State Governor, Chief James Onanephe Ibori, into intense fear and tension, highlighting a terrifying surge in local insecurity, as this victim is the youngest widow of the respected Ibori family patriarch, retired soldier, and former Onukbrogodo of Oharefe, High Chief William Boyi Agbakanya Ibori, who was born on February 2, 1942, and passed away from a heart attack at age 76 on July 11, 2018, leaving behind his wives, Mrs. Elizabeth and Omotsiri Syrian Ibori, alongside 9 children and 18 grandchildren, while her father, Chief Lucky Ben, recently confirmed exclusively to Osazuwakonedo News Media that his daughter is currently 40 years old, which clarifies historical timelines and corrects past social media rumors by establishing that she was approximately 32 years old when her high-profile traditional wedding ceremony was celebrated in Oharefe on Saturday, March 17, 2018, just 4 months before her husband's demise, meaning this high-profile abduction has severely worsened local anxiety by coming on the heels of another recent violent incident in Ogara where local farmer Mr. Vincent Adoja was brutally murdered on his farm and his wife kidnapped for ransom, forcing Ethiopia West Local Government Council Chairman Honorable Chris Onigba to vow an aggressive security crackdown as terrified residents demand urgent, decisive tactical intervention from the police command to halt the growing criminal epidemic. Close family sources confirmed to our correspondent that the victims, the wife of the late High Chief Williams Boyi Agbekanya Ibori and their 7-year-old son, Williams Ibori Jr., were intercepted last week Wednesday and bundled away by kidnappers on their way to Ogara. The victims have now spent 9 agonizing days in captivity. According to insider family sources, the criminal ring initially demanded a staggering 150 million nairas ransom for their release. However, following frantic negotiations, the kidnappers slashed the demands to 5 million nairas. Despairing relatives revealed that the family is still struggling to raise the 5 million nairas sum to secure the freedom of the mother and child. The late husband of the abducted woman, High Chief Williams Ibori, was the revered Onugbogodo, traditional spokesman of Oharefe in the Ogara Kingdom. A retired soldier and a member of the Delta State Advisory and Peace-Building Council, he passed away in 2018. This direct attack on his immediate family underscores a dangerous breakdown of security in the Ethiopia West local government area, spearheading fear that no one is safe. Just days ago, on Monday, June 29, 2026, a brutal attack occurred on a farm in Ogara. A local farmer, Mr. Vincent Adoja, was ambushed and brutally murdered by armed assailants between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. while working on his land. The attackers butchered Mr. Adoja on the spot before forcefully carting away his wife into the forest. The community was thrown into panic, with the deceased's body deposited at a local morgue. After intense trauma and the emergency payment of an undisclosed ransom by desperate relatives, Mrs. Adoja was finally released by her captors. In response to the rapidly deteriorating security situation, the executive chairman of Ethiopia West Local Government Council, Honorable Chris Onigba, led a high-powered delegation on a condolence visit to the grieving Adoja family. Accompanying him were the council vice-chairman, Austin Atomre, and the leader of the legislative arm, Honorable Felix Ejimoyoma. Vowing an aggressive crackdown on the kidnapping syndicates operating within the axis. Honorable Onigba condemned the incidents as completely unacceptable. It is a painful loss that no family should have to endure, Onigba stated during the visit. We will deploy every lawful means within our authority to combat kidnapping and other criminal activities threatening the peace and security of our communities. Insecurity will not be allowed to thrive in any part of this local government. The chairman disclosed that all relevant security agencies have been explicitly ordered to intensify field investigations, fish out the perpetrators, and bring them to justice. He also appealed to tense residents to avoid taking the law into their hands, reassuring the public that the council is working around the clock to restore lasting law and order. As the 9-day countdown continues for the captive sister-in-law and young nephew of former Governor Ibori, community leaders and residents are urgently calling on the Delta State Police Command to deploy tactical squads to flush out the criminal elements hiding in the border forests of Ogara. Efforts to reach the Delta State Police Public Relations Officer, PPRO, SP Bright Edife, for official comment on the incident proved abortive, as multiple phone calls went unanswered and a detailed inquiry message sent to his desk is yet to be replied to at the time of filing this report. In a swift reaction to the deteriorating safety situation in the region, a prominent socio-cultural advocacy group, the Ogara Study Group, OSG, has expressed profound grief and outrage over what it termed an alarming deterioration of security across the kingdom. In an official press statement released on Wednesday, July 1, 2026, the group noted that the recent abduction of a local couple, which resulted in the brutal murder of the husband and the ransom-fueled release of his wife, has fully exposed the terrifying security vulnerability confronting local residents. The advocacy group emphasized that the violent ambush is not an isolated incident, warning that Ogara Kingdom is rapidly transforming into a volatile hotspot for coordinated kidnappings, armed robberies, banditry, and senseless killings. According to the leadership, This continuous wave of criminality has severely paralyzed local socio-economic activities, instilling constant fear in residents, forcing farmers to abandon their farmlands completely, and crippling businesses operating under persistent existential threats. Condemning the heinous acts of violence, the group extended its condolences to the family of the deceased farmer and sympathized with his surviving wife over her captivity trauma. Signed by prominent leaders, Reverend David Ugola and Professor Oghenruona Egweri, the statement strongly asserted that criminality has no ethnic, religious, or political justification, demanding that no criminal gang should be permitted to convert Ogara Kingdom into a safe haven for violent networks. To arrest the worsening crisis, the Ogara Study Group explicitly petitioned the federal government of Nigeria, the Delta State Government, the Ethiopia West Local Government Council, and all joint security forces, including the Nigeria Police Force, the Nigerian Army, the Department of State Services, DSS, and the Civil Defense Corps, to urgently deploy reinforced personnel, tactical intelligence assets, and surveillance technology to restore absolute peace to the territory. Specifically, the group urged the joint security authorities to launch aggressive field operations to dismantle hidden forest camps, increase armed patrols along major transit highways, rural farmlands, and local waterways, and establish rapid response units. They further demanded a thorough, conclusive investigation into the recent abductions to ensure that every individual connected to the criminal network is identified and prosecuted under the law. The statement also called for the immediate strengthening of community policing frameworks, urging the Ogara Traditional Institution, youth groups, market associations, and religious bodies to deepen their tactical cooperation with security agencies through lawful information sharing. While acknowledging the widespread anger and frustration boiling within the community, the group strictly cautioned local youth against resorting to mob justice, ethnic profiling, or lawless vigilante reprisals, maintaining that suspect tracking must rely purely on credible evidence and the rule of law. Concluding the briefing, the group declared this period a defining moment for the kingdom, stating that protection of life remains the primary responsibility of government and that enough is enough. The leadership reaffirmed its commitment to actively engaging state actors until absolute public safety is restored, insisting that the security of Ogara must become an immediate, non-negotiable national priority.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Africa Network for Environment and Economic Justice, ANEEJ, has expressed deep concern over the acquittal of former Nigerian Minister of Petroleum Resources, Mrs. Diezani Alison Madueke, by a United Kingdom court, describing the verdict as a troubling moment for the global fight against corruption, illicit financial flows (IFFs), and impunity, a statement that follows the June 17, 2026, ruling at the Southwark Crown Court in London, where a jury cleared Alison Madueke of all 6 bribery charges brought against her by the UK's National Crime Agency, NCA, after a 5-month trial and 46 hours of deliberation, while her co-defendants, oil executive Olutimbo Iyinde and her brother, Doya Gama, were also acquitted, bringing a dramatic end to a saga that began more than a decade ago, a development that prompted ANEEJ to take immediate action today, June 23, 2026, by launching a critical 2-day capacity building workshop in Abuja in collaboration with the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, NFIU, a body domiciled within the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, and Special Control Unit Against Money Laundering, SQML, an arm of the EFCC, to aggressively equip civil society organizations, CSOs, with the necessary tools to track, combat, and dismantle these very same illicit financial flows across Nigeria. Alison Madueke served as Nigeria's powerful oil minister from 2010 to 2015 and was the first female president of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. Her tenure was immediately hit by controversy when former Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN Governor, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi alleged that $20 billion in oil revenue had gone missing under her watch. In May 2015, just as the administration of President Goodluck Jonathan was handing over power to Muhammadu Buhari, Alison Madueke left Nigeria for London. By October 2015, the UK's NCA arrested her on suspicion of bribery and money laundering, seizing her passport and sparking a 13-year international investigation. For years, Alison Madueke's legal team fiercely resisted attempts by Nigeria's Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, to extradite her back to Abuja to face separate corruption charges. Her prolonged stay in the UK was repeatedly defended on critical medical grounds. Her lawyers disclosed that she was diagnosed with triple-negative cancer, describing it as the most aggressive form of breast cancer. Over the decade, her defense stated that she underwent multiple major surgeries and extensive chemotherapy treatments in London hospitals, leaving her at one point in a coma due to medical complications. These health battles, combined with the extreme complexity of cross-border financial tracking, left her on continuous UK bail for 8 years before she was formally charged in 2023. Despite prosecutors presenting evidence that oil contractors funded a life of luxury for her in London, including spending £2 million at Harrods, securing private jet flights, and occupying high-end properties, the case ultimately collapsed because the prosecution failed to meet the strict criminal standard of proof. The Southwark Crown Court acquitted Alison Madueke based on 2 central pillars: failure to prove direct bribery. The jury found that the prosecution's evidence was largely circumstantial. Alison Madueke successfully argued that she maintained strict due process, had no direct authority over contract awards, and that any luxury spending cited by the prosecution was either personally reimbursed or fell under official state business expenses. The broken system and gross delays. Her defense team successfully argued that the extraordinary 13-year delay by British authorities ruined the fairness of the trial. They asserted that the passage of time, coupled with a broken criminal justice system, made it impossible for the defendants to access vital exculpatory documents and evidence remaining in Nigeria to prove their innocence. While acknowledging the independence of the British judicial system, the ANEEJ leadership warned that the collapse of such a prominent international prosecution sends a dangerous signal to corrupt actors across the continent. While ANEEJ respects the independence of the British judicial system and the verdict reached by the court, this outcome represents a major setback in efforts to hold politically exposed persons accountable and combat grand corruption. It risks emboldening kleptocratic governments, corrupt public officials and their enablers across Nigeria and Africa who continue to loot public resources with impunity, said Reverend David Ugola, Executive Director of ANEEJ. The organization noted that the verdict deals a heavy blow to the UK's historical reputation as a leader in international asset recovery, transparency, and beneficial ownership reforms. ANEEJ expressed worry over a growing retreat by major Western democracies from robust action against grand corruption. Ugola warned that if the UK and the US take a back seat, prospects for ending impunity in Africa will become increasingly uncertain. The collapse of one of the most prominent corruption prosecutions involving a former African public official may weaken confidence in these commitments and undermine broader international efforts to tackle illicit financial flows. At a time when corruption continues to fuel poverty, inequality, insecurity and democratic backsliding across Africa, diminished international resolve risks strengthening those who profit from state capture and weak governance, Reverend Ugola added. A key point of concern for the international human and environmental rights watchdog, ANEEJ, is the sharp contrast between the London acquittal and established legal realities in Nigeria. Over the years, Nigerian courts have successfully ordered the forfeiture of billions of naira worth of properties, cash, and luxury items linked directly to the former petroleum minister. ANEEJ emphasized that these domestic recoveries, secured through lawful judicial processes, underscore the massive scale of illicit wealth accumulated. The UK acquittal, therefore, raises difficult questions about the effectiveness of cross-border enforcement and the capacity of international institutions to bring complex grand corruption cases to a successful conclusion. These recoveries, secured through established legal channels, underscore the scale of illicit wealth allegedly accumulated and the importance of sustained international cooperation in tracing, freezing, confiscating and repatriating stolen assets. The acquittal therefore raises difficult questions about the effectiveness of cross-border anti-corruption enforcement and the ability of national and international institutions to bring complex grand corruption cases to a successful conclusion, Ugola said. ANEEJ warned that the judgment could demoralize citizens, anti-corruption agencies, whistleblowers, and investigative journalists who risked their lives to demand transparency. However, the organization stressed that the verdict must serve as a critical wake-up call rather than a deterrent. ANEEJ called on African governments and international partners to redouble their efforts by strengthening local institutions, improving cross-border judicial cooperation, protecting whistleblowers, and closing the financial loopholes that facilitate illicit flows. The fight against corruption is ultimately about justice for citizens. It is about ensuring that public resources are used to improve lives rather than enrich a privileged few. The struggle against corruption and illicit financial flows remains central to achieving democracy, sustainable development and social justice across Africa, Ugola said, reaffirming ANEEJ's commitment to working with Nigerian and international institutions to ensure stolen public assets are recovered and used to improve public lives. In direct response to these ongoing transparency challenges and the staggering scale of national losses, ANEEJ today, June 23, 2026, commenced a two-day capacity-building workshop in Abuja focused on addressing illicit financial flows, IFFs, in Nigeria. The training brings together key civil society organizations, CSOs alongside distinguished stakeholders, including SECFAN Africa representative, Professor Abdullahi Shehu, and the Nigeria Financial Intelligence Unit, NFIU, represented by Chief Governance, Risk and Compliance Officer, Mr. Ibrahim Muhammad on behalf of Hafsat Abubakar Bakari. Representatives from the Special Control Unit Against Money Laundering, SQML and the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, are also participating. In his welcome remarks, ANEEJ's Deputy Executive Director, Atakpo Leo, emphasized that the workshop is part of the project, strengthening CSOs and media capacity to contribute to the fight against illicit financial flows in Nigeria. He highlighted the critical role of CSOs in advancing public accountability, citizen mobilization, budget monitoring, procurement tracking, tax justice advocacy, anti-corruption campaigns, and policy engagement. According to Leo, the workshop aims to deepen participants' understanding of the nature, drivers, trends, and developmental impacts of IFFs, while strengthening their knowledge of relevant legal, policy, and institutional frameworks. It also equips CSOs with practical tools for evidence-based advocacy, procurement monitoring, freedom of information, FOI utilization, data access, coalition building, and strategic institutional engagement. Delivering a goodwill message, Professor Abdullahi Shehu noted Nigeria's strategic importance within Africa and commended ANEEJ for its outstanding research on IFFs. He encouraged participants to actively engage in governance processes, hold elected officials accountable, and participate in democratic processes, including voter registration. Representing NFIU, Mr. Ibrahim Muhammad reiterated the importance of understanding IFFs beyond financial crimes, stressing Nigeria's significant role in combating illicit outflows. He underscored the need for collective action across sectors, noting that illicit flows can occur through multiple channels, including financial institutions and non-profit organizations. Similarly, Mr. Pascal Joseph Samu, who represented SQML, an arm of the EFCC, highlighted the severe developmental impact of IFFs, revealing that Nigeria has lost over $77.7 billion in the last decade, with an estimated $18 billion lost annually. He emphasized SCUM's commitment to implementing beneficial ownership transparency as a key measure to curb IFFs and reaffirmed institutional support for the workshop's outcomes. The workshop continues with strong collaboration among stakeholders, reinforcing a collective commitment to combating illicit financial flows and strengthening transparency, accountability, and sustainable development across Nigeria.
I'm just thankful to God. It's been a very, very arduous and long, almost 11 years. It's been traumatic for, not just for me, but for my family, for friends, for all those who have stayed and supported, for my 93-year-old mother in Port Harcourt, for my son, and for all those who love us, friends and family. Look, we're surrounded by friends here. You know. So it has been a hard journey, but I'll tell you this. God will always do as God wills, and God will be God. Amen. God is not a man that he should lie. And so when he promises you something, he will see it through. Sure. It has been almost 11 years I've been here. I did my job to the best of my ability. But like I said, God is not a man. God is God. And we thank him. Praise the Lord.
Osazuwakan Nebel, bringing you the news in a more digital way. Osazuwakan Nebel, bringing you the news in a more digital way.